as well. But first, if you take a trip into the countryside, you don't have to travel all that far now before seeing a solar farm or more popping up across our countryside. But there's growing concern they could pose a risk to farmland. Well, joining me to discuss this more is Steve Crowther from the Campaign to Protect Rural England and Tom Bradshaw, President of the National Farmers Union. Thank you both so much for your time this morning. Tom, we'll start with you. You think that solar panels and solar farms have a place in part on our landscape?
We think that farms are very well placed to provide for food security and energy security, but it's about prioritising that land use. So the best and most versatile land should be maintained for food production. But at the moment, we've got a huge amount of building roofs that aren't being used for energy production. And the biggest barrier to that is access to the grid. So we would like to see accessibility to the grid for small-scale wind, solar and battery being much more available to our membership so that we can provide those small-scale solutions right the way across the country.
Steve, whilst Tom's talking there, we're showing our viewers pictures of quite sizable fields covered in solar panel farms. And you are concerned about the quality of some of the land that is being taken out of use, in particular for livestock production.
Yes, indeed. I am the chairman of Devon CPRE, and the problem is the agricultural land classification system. So Tom referred earlier on to best and most versatile land, which we call BMV, which is the kind of buzzword for land that is of higher quality, which should be protected from these very large solar farms. The problem is here in Devon, we are the leading in the leading region for the production of livestock for food. And the agricultural land classification system regards our land, our prime pasture land, as grade 3B. In other words, not particularly good because it grows grass, it doesn't grow crops. And the ALC is very much geared towards crops in the east of England, for instance, where that is their priority. But we produce vast quantities of food here by having livestock that eats grass, and they're very good converters of grass into protein. But 3B land, which is a third of our farmland, is absolutely fair game for the big solar farms now, because the more and more the debate goes on about BMV land being protected, the more that funnels big solar farms down towards our land, for instance, in Devon. We consider that our prime pasture growing livestock, and we have some of the best livestock rearing land in the world here, should be protected as well. It is equally important in an agricultural sense and in a food security sense. I mean, we already have 4,500 acres of Devon under solar farms now. And that's the equivalent of nearly 30 average-sized farms have gone under glass. And we just think that's we're asking all the candidates in the coming election to pledge to try and get 3B included, prime pasture included in the definition of land that should not be going under solar farms.
Tom, your reaction to Steve's points?
Well, I think that there's some fair considerations there. I mean, the government need to decide whether energy security or food security is more important. And that's where the challenge comes, that we've got all political parties saying that food security is a critical part of our national security. Now they need to deliver the actions that are going to underpin that are going to enable us to grow the amount of food we produce here. We're less than 60% self-sufficient. Imports will always be a key part of food security, but domestic food production has been taken for granted, and we need to make sure that we really prioritise that as we move into this election.
I totally agree with that.
You agree with those points. Is it not the case that there is scope for both, and that it is also useful at times for farms to have the resilience of other elements to their business than just food production?
You're absolutely right. Again, that diversification is something which many farms have done, and that's why I talk about the ability to have small-scale wind and solar with battery storage. But grid connections there are the biggest barrier. And what you find with these large solar farms is that often the grid capacity, that there are very few grid connections. But when you get one, then that's why there is this big sort of intense area of solar farms all around that grid connection. And we're seeing that right the way across the country where they've got access to these grid connections.
Steve, to you.
At the risk of agreeing with Tom too much, we are absolutely as one in terms of the need for the government to prioritise solar on rooftops. There are 250,000 hectares of south-facing rooftops in this country available for solar power production. CPRE is absolutely prioritising this as a campaign. It is absurd, really, that that high-quality, productive farmland is going under solar, and the only reason it is, incidentally, is because it's cheaper and easier to do, rather than all of these south-facing rooftops that are doing nothing other than keeping rain out, and which could meet 3/4 of the government's target for solar between now and 2035, and well exceed it by 2050. I think that's the key thing. The government has got to take harder decisions. I do understand why it is attractive for farmers to have solar farms on their land, and as Tom's predecessor as NFU president said only a few days ago, she understands also why it is, but it's effectively far too tempting for a farmer to be able to take £1,200 a hectare guaranteed locked in for 20 years, when really the only beneficiary of that is themselves.
Sure.
She was very critical indeed of that trend. Tom also mentioned battery storage. I mean, there have been small-scale solar arrays on farmland for a long time, and farms that do that, I know several myself, farmers that have put in solar. They graze their sheep under them. They're quite low-density solar, and they use the power themselves, and that helps to reduce demand on the grid. The problem
I'm afraid I'm going to have to just jump in there. We're a little short on time, gentlemen, I'm afraid. But Steve, Tom, appreciate you both this morning. I appreciate you making time for us. Thank you.
Thank you.